The portal continues to heat up for the Oklahoma Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Go download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase over at GameTime. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. The Oklahoma Sooners made a splash in the transfer portal, adding former five-star edge Marvin Jones Jr.
That was a huge pickup. You get yourself a former five-star edge, one that you recruited and honestly almost committed to Oklahoma November 2021, but we had the regime change right at that moment, and instead he decided to go ahead and commit to Georgia. Didn't work out there. Tried Florida State, in which that was just bad overall. Can't really blame him there. And now he gets to come to Oklahoma, a place that we were hoping he was going to come in the beginning. And so there's a lot of things that are kind of tied behind him, John, that, makes me have some questions about him. But I believe since Marvin Jones Jr. decided to pick Oklahoma, it feels like his goal is to get better, to be developed, and to go out there and play. We're already seeing what R. Mason Thomas did. Ethan Downs played his butt off the last couple of years under this regime, and it looks like you're seeing improvement with some of them. Trace Ford actually had some pretty breakout season from him, especially dealing with injuries. So I think Marvin Jones is looking at the opportunity to really be developed and get better. And, basically show people, the naysayers out there, that he really can be the five-star that he was coming into college from high school.
Yeah, he was the number 2 edge in the 2022 recruiting class. You mentioned Oklahoma with Alex Grinch and Jamar Cain were pursuing him as well. But Brent Venables and Clemson, they were also one of the offers that he had on his lengthy offer sheet coming out of high school. And yeah, I think if you're picking Oklahoma, you're picking to be coached by Brent Venables and Miguel Chavis and whoever the defensive coordinator is. You're coming into a situation where you expect to be coached hard, and you're going to be asked a lot of, and the expectations are going to be high. And for you to be able to see the field, you have to meet those expectations. And so, whatever Marvin Jones Jr. has been, whether at Georgia or at Florida State, the dude is ready to, how do I put this? He's ready to take advantage of a serious opportunity, and with a coaching staff that's showing that they can develop some defensive ends. You mentioned Ethan Downs. I think R. Mason Thomas is a key aspect of this as well, because here's a guy that was a 3-star prospect. He was heading to Iowa State, and I think everybody liked some of the tools that he had, but you just weren't sure if he was going to be able to hold up as a defensive end in the SEC. And he proved more than capable of doing that. Marvin Jones comes in with much better size than R. Mason Thomas did coming into Oklahoma. He's 6'5", 255. That is fantastic building blocks for the Oklahoma staff to be able to work with. Now it's a matter of just putting all the pieces together. Nobody denies the talent.
No, 100% agree. 100% agree with you there. And that's the thing. With that size and playing in the SEC, he's going to be a problem for opposing offensive lines. Because it's funny, George Stoya over at Sooner Scoops and On 3 had put out a tweet kind of talking about the lineups or whatnot. You'll have a R. Mason Thomas with the Daniel Okoye. That's kind of your 2 deep there. With then Jaden Jackson, Dominic Williams, Grayson Halton, David Stone, and then Marvin Jones Jr. with PJ Adebawore. That might be one of, if not, is at least a top 5 defensive line in the SEC right now. If not top 3, it could be at the top, because we've got some talent there. We just need the offense to be complementary and make it work.
Yeah, I mean, the defensive tackle group proved ready to be in the SEC and ready to hold up against SEC offensive lines. Your edge group was really, really good with Ethan Downs, R. Mason Thomas. Now you need to see those other guys step up and take on significant roles. You need to see Marvin Jones be ready to step into a starting role and produce at a high level, produce at the 5-star status that he was ranked coming out of high school. You need to see PJ Adebawore begin to do the same things as well. Danny Okoye, same. all of these guys that are blue chip prospects now need to live up to those blue chip billings going into 2025. It can't all be on the interior group, and it can't all be on R. Mason Thomas to provide a pass rush. You got to find somebody on the other side of the defensive line. We're seeing it with Ohio State. We've talked about it ad nauseum during this playoff run. What they're getting out of their edge duo is phenomenal, and that's what's been playing so well. South Carolina had the same thing going on with Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart. It made them so difficult to defend. And if Oklahoma can find another guy that can put up 6-7 sacks opposite of R. Mason Thomas next year, that would be huge, man. And it would give them a really good opportunity to have not just a good defense, but an elite defense, and one that is able to rush the passer for all 4 quarters.
And that's what you're looking for. You want to make sure that you're not only terrorizing opposing offenses late in the game whenever you really need a big stop. You got to start that early. That way, when you get closer to halftime and into the second half, it gets a lot easier for you to be able to do it, because those teams at that point are panicking. You want them to hear the footsteps coming. You want that quarterback to see ghosts. You want them to be nervous about that Oklahoma Sooners defense flying at them. And the best part is that we are doing a beautiful job of having a trajectory up. That's what we're seeing on this defense. It's gotten better and better every year. It is stacking talent on top of talent. And honestly, I think the one thing I do like about picking up a player like Marvin Jones Jr., he has because he's part of the 22 class, so that means he probably played in 22, 23, and 24. So he has probably 1 year left of eligibility going into 25, which, I'm going to be honest, that's a good thing for us, and it feels like that is what this staff has been doing when it comes to these certain players, John. It really feels like Brent Venables and all of his staff they like their current players. And we have to talk about that more in depth probably in another episode later on as the portal continues to develop. But it really does feel like we actually like the recruits we've gotten over the last 3 classes. So we want to play them more, but we're adding additional pieces because you could use one more veteran here, an additional vet there, just to fill out the roster. It doesn't feel like we're trying to replace anybody. We're trying to supplement what we are currently have and we're currently developing.
Well, and it's another veteran that has, over 600, almost 700 snaps to his name. I mean, he's played a lot of football in his 3 seasons in a rotational role with both Georgia and Florida State, but it snaps nonetheless. And in 2024 with the Seminoles, he was at his best. He had 4 sacks, he had 6 tackles for loss, he had 16 total pressures according to PFF. He had 25 total tackles, and that's better than his first 2 years combined. So he's getting better each year. Now it's kind of put up or shut up time. It's make or break time for him. He's got 1 year of eligibility, and he has one opportunity to go and make a name for himself if he has overtures of going to the NFL. Like, this is the opportunity. This is the chance. And I mean, and he provides a little competition for those blue chip prospects that you've got on your roster that you do like, that you want to see break out and step into starring roles this next year. If they don't, though, you've got a guy that's played some snaps at defensive end in the ACC and the SEC, so he's not going to be caught off guard with playing a lot for the Oklahoma Sooners. And again, you're not asking him to come out and be your frontline defensive end, your frontline pass rusher, assuming, again, R. Mason Thomas is coming back. But even if he's not, how much easier is his job going to be when you've got guys like Jaden Jackson and Dominic Williams, Grayson Halton, and David Stone rushing from the interior?
Yeah, you've got a really well. Yeah, you've got a good line. That's a good thing. Exactly. As you pointed out, we've got a really good interior defensive line. So that's definitely not the fear or even the concern that we would even have, because we know that they have the capabilities of going out there and wrecking shop. We've seen it this season. Like, we've seen the improvement, 35 sacks to 26 that we had last year. So we've gotten more sacks. We're getting more hurries and pressures on the opposing teams. I mean, R. Mason Thomas had 9 sacks last season, and I'm still just baffled by the fact that he did that, with 6 of those coming in SEC play. So now we just got to go out there and continue to win. And I think that we have a good opportunity now, adding a player of the caliber of Marvin Jones Jr. to make that happen.
Yeah, the defense continues to have a trajectory pointing upward. Now it's just a matter of the offense can join them playing good football next year. One thing that we're waiting on is the decision of R. Mason Thomas. What is it going to take, and when might we have that decision? We'll discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets, guaranteed. That's $250 in bonus bets. Win or lose this time around. Win or lose, you'll get it. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need, from live bets, same-day parlays, and so much more. And so, like right now, you know, with the NFL, the playoffs are about to come up. And so, as that's set, my Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I got Washington coming into town, and the Bucs are a 3.5-point favorite. If you feel like the Bucs can make that happen, go ahead and take the opportunity. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there tuning in, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on podcast platforms and on YouTube, so hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So R. Mason Thomas, that's the decision that everybody is waiting on. One Oklahoma dropped a tweet over there on X Twitter that seemed to indicate that he was coming back, but then deleted it fairly quickly after that. So, Jay, where do you think this stands? I think everybody's kind of assuming that he comes back, but one guy I talked to that covers the draft pretty as close as you could probably cover the draft believes R. Mason Thomas could be a top 50 pick, and everybody's just kind of waiting on his announcement at this point.
Yeah, it sounds like his grades are coming a little bit better than anticipated. And so R. Mason's not really giving us anything in specific, but he decided to have fun with everybody on Friday. He posted a tweet over there on the X Bird, and it was, thank you, Sooner Nation. So people were assuming that he was leaving, but he never said that he was gone. And it had reference to Grease. And he put a picture of John Travolta from Grease 2. For those, the uninitiated, in the movie Grease 2. John Travolta, his name is Danny. And he basically tells a young lady he's coming back to school. So, there's a lot of play going on here. We don't know. Could he be like Danny was? Danny Stutzman, that is, and make his return back? Telling the people that he's going to be back? Or is he going to ride off in the sunset and just tell Sooner Nation thank you? I don't know, but it feels like he's more likely to come back than not. Now, the Marvin Jones Jr. pickup, a lot of people have asked most recently is, does that mean that R. Mason Thomas is gone? And honestly, no. And just as you're saying, John, no, it's not, because you got to remember, we lost 3 edges to graduation this year in Ethan Downs, Trace Ford, as well as Caden Woolard. So you lost 3 veteran presence out there, and you have nothing but young guys left, from R. Mason Thomas into PJ Adebaware, Daniel Okoye, Taylor Wine, Wyatt Gilmore, as well as Nigel Smith. You've got a lot of young edges, so you kind of need to add additional veterans. So that's what Marvin Jones Jr. and potentially another one could be. But John, Jared Akanik, who has been tweeting for evil lately, decided to put a little picture up here that said, which is kind of funny, it says, R. Mason, is this the end? And he says, of course not. It's only the beginning. What does this mean? Can someone decode this for us?
I'm glad the players are having some fun with it, because given how exuberant Sooner Nation can be on the X with recruiting, performances in games, so on and so forth, I'm glad the players are having a little bit of fun with this, to be honest. Like,
yeah,
troll the fans a little bit. We kind of deserve it. Let's just be honest. And so, listen, I'm kind of the assumption that he's going to be back. That's kind of why I keep talking like he's going to be back. Mm-hmm. Not because I don't think he can't jump to the league this year. I just think that one more really good year out of him could honestly push him into a legit first-round pick. Add a little bit more size, a little bit more strength and conditioning, where he can maybe, if you can get up to like 245, 250, if you could do that over this next offseason while keeping the same explosiveness, keeping that same quickness and agility, that puts you right there into the first round where you're potentially a top 20 pick if you have back-to-back years of high-level production, because he's got the tools in the tool belt to be a legit pass rusher at the next level. We're seeing what a guy like Nick Bonito, who arguably was probably considered a little bit undersized coming into the league, we're seeing what he's doing now, right? He's just having a terror of a season for the Denver Broncos. So I could see a similar kind of trajectory for an R. Mason Thomas. So much of it, a lot of times, and this kind of goes back to the Marvin Jones Jr. thing, is landing spot. So much about your success has to do with where you land. And we're seeing it with R. Mason Thomas. He's landed in a really good spot. Could it be that for Marvin Jones Jr., this is the spot for him that allows him to really break out and have that success? A guy that kind of reminds me of is like a Dante Fowler. Like Dante Fowler at the NFL level, like he was okay at different spots. Had a good year for Jacksonville and then kind of fell off for several years with Jacksonville and LA. And then he broke out again with LA and then fell off again in a couple years with Atlanta, and then had another couple really solid seasons with Dallas. And now here we are at 30 years old, 10.5 sacks. Again, it's just about landing spot and about fit. And when you find the right fit, you can have these big time seasons. So I'm hoping R. Mason Thomas comes back, because I think what he did this year is just scratching the surface of what he can do.
Yeah, I agree with you there. If he can come back with another 9-sack season, or at least close to that this year, I think that does nothing but propel his stock into where he becomes a top 40 player, top 30. But if he's already listed as top 50, it honestly feels like it makes sense to go pro. So it's kind of where we're sitting in the waiting game. We've got to January 15th. That's when he has to declare. And then at that point, we'll know. He'll probably have his grade or idea of potential what day he could be at that point, and then we'll know if he's going to make the return. I'm still in the position, in the belief that he will, because it makes the most sense if he does come back again and he shows out. Because the one problem we've seen with R. Mason has been health. We need to see him fully healthy. And he showed us this year. Gave us a fully healthy season, and he was cooking. Maybe the NFL will ask to see that again, but I don't know. That's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, I think just needing to prove that you can stay healthy for another year, I think that matters. I think repeating the production, I think that can matter a little bit too. And then also just showing like just the reproducibility of what he did. You know, so much of what he did was end of game stuff when teams were in pass only mode. Can he do it for 4 quarters? Can he show up in the first and second quarter and be, wreaking havoc on teams? I mean, I think he's good enough to go be an effective pass rusher at the NFL level now. Again, I think if he came back, it would benefit him. He was tied for 14th in the SEC in total pressures with 36. So good, really good production. Obviously the 9.5 sacks, really good production. Can he take it to another level though? I think there's still another level that he can unlock in his game that will solidify him as a first round pick. And that first round money is much different money. And then you get that 5th year option, that 5th year is guaranteed money. I mean, that kind of stuff can matter. And again, so much of it comes down to landing spot as well. If you're a fringe first rounder, you're going to a good team where you have the potential to not have to be the guy. You can be one of the guys on a really good defense. So I don't know. Right. It's going to be fascinating to see what his decision ultimately is. Again, I'm leaning towards he's coming back, but only R. Mason Thomas and maybe some of his teammates know what's going to happen. But we'll find that out here over the next 10 days officially. Right? January 15th,
January 15th
draft declaration. There it is. All right. There was a lot of happenings in the transfer portal over the weekend. Some Oklahoma guys entering, some targets entering, some former relationships entering. We'll discuss all that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Attending the new 12-team college football playoff games is an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. I remember the excitement of past playoff games and can't wait to make new memories with the updated format and extra teams involved. GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I used GameTime Picks to find tickets for a Nate Bargatze show that's going to be happening next year. Browsing through the deals was a breeze, and I found great value for all kinds of seats around the venue. The super deal in particular stood out as the best value for the event. I love that I could see the seat views before buying and that the app shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Plus, the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee gave me complete peace of mind. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute ticket, lowest price guaranteed over at Game Time. Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Quite a bit of portal happenings, Jay, over the weekend on Friday. Was it Friday or Saturday? Michael Patterson McDonald entered the transfer portal.
It was Friday. It was on Friday.
It was part of my day job work week, so it kind of all ran together. But yeah, Michael Patterson McDonald out of Westmore High School, the 3-star prospect that came to Oklahoma, a player I really like and I think is kind of flew under the radar a little bit in recruiting circles just because of his size, but is somebody that I really like. But according to Brandon Drum, who shared this with KREF and then also shared it over at OU Insider, the idea with Michael Patterson McDonald is to bring him back as a preferred walk-on. But in order to do that, you have to enter the transfer portal according to the new rules. So a really interesting dynamic that's at play with MPM.
Yeah, it sounds like it's mainly around the just trying to take the tick mark, that number off of the scholarship side into the PWO side because of the restrictions down to 105 players. I believe that we are just under 85 scholarships, maybe closer to 84. But I know that we still have our other irons in the fire right now of players that we are going at. So there's a chance that we may see a little bit more of that mixture happen in order for us to get that number down and stay around the 105 level, which I'm cool with it. We don't have to officially be at 105 until July 1st, in which, to me, we'll probably hover just over 105 throughout until we get to the spring portal. And I think at the spring portal is where you're going to see the biggest portion of cleansing from every schools in college football. But for Oklahoma, the Sooners' goal is to make sure they have enough scholarships available. You still got to have only 85 scholarships. That's the only thing that matters. Anything past that, you can clean that up, like I said, closer to the spring side. So Michael Patterson McDonald hitting the portal to be able to transition into a PWO makes sense, right? That's just one additional body that because we got 8 safeties right now. He'd be technically number 8 on that list with the new guys. And so, yeah, it makes sense as a move. I hope we do maintain him. I do have high hopes for him out there. I've seen him, he looks like he's gotten bigger and like he's stronger. So hopefully he's ready to go out there and hit some folks. So, yeah, I'm totally down for it.
It reminds me a little bit of what NFL teams have to do if they want to get a guy from their active roster to the practice squad. You have to, quote unquote, cut him and then hope nobody picks him up to be able to move him to the practice squad. Well, at least you used to have to do that. Now you have some more leeway given some new practice squad rules, but that's kind of what it reminds me of a little bit. Obviously they're not cutting Michael Patterson McDonald. So don't mistake me there. Another interesting note here, former Oklahoma commit and 4-star wide receiver that flipped to Georgia entered the transfer portal, Jay. And I know that Oklahoma's already added 4 wide receivers in the portal, but it wouldn't surprise me to see them add another one. I don't know if it's going to be Anthony Evans, but the way they're circling back on guys that they were recruiting heavily before wouldn't surprise me.
No, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked at all either, because that's exactly what we've seen out of them, and talking about in the last segment around Marvin Jones Jr. and R. Mason Thomas potentially leaving. The Sooners, seeing Brent Venables and staff, seem to be going after the guys that they've had conversations with before since 2022, and, trying to woo them back. Now, I'm still trying to get a better understanding as to why Brent Venables and staff haven't tried to woo any of those Clemson guys that have hit the portal that they used to recruit back in the day. But I guess he still has his little moratorium going, which I still think is ridiculous, but I digress. Going after players that you do have past relationships with, and we talked about this in the green room, it makes a lot of sense. It's a lot easier conversation. We talked before. I understood that you didn't want to pick us before, but now that things have changed, would you like to give us a second look? And in some of these players, you were the second team on the list, like Marvin Jones Jr. Oklahoma was number 2 behind Georgia when he first went to Georgia because he was going to commit to Oklahoma. Decided to transfer into Florida State, played there a couple of years, and decided when he got back in, Oklahoma's like, hey, still here. Holler at us. And having them come back, sometimes it's good to get them back because, the grass isn't always green on the other side. And some people realize it, like, you know what? Probably should have tried at Oklahoma first and see if that was the better spot. Now they're making their return. I'm excited about that. And so I don't know if Oklahoma goes after Anthony Evans. It feels like we got 2 of those. I mean, you got Josiah Martin as well as Isaiah Satania from Arkansas. So you kind of got both of them already. But I do expect the Sooners to go get one more wide receiver out of the portal. At least. Maybe a second, but I do expect at least one more.
Yeah, and we'll see, because just the way that all transpired where, hey, he was committed to Oklahoma and then wanted to go to the Georgia game and then ultimately decommitted and then flipped to Georgia. Who knows how the staff feels about all that or what the relationship's like. I don't imagine that Emmett Jones is a guy that just like burns bridges and cuts people off completely. So I gotta believe that there's still some connection there, but we'll see where they end up there. But or did he even? Emmett Jones wasn't even on staff. I think.
I don't think
Emmett
Jones
he
was
not.
the guy that recruited him. No, it was that was a Jeff Levy recruit.
Yep. So never mind. He might end up at Mississippi State. So scratch the Emmett Jones talk on that front. Another guy, Jeremiah Alexander, a former Alabama Crimson Tide into the transfer portal. He was a 4-star prospect. Didn't play much this year. He only played in 3 games for the Crimson Tide. So he's going to have some eligibility left. But what do you make of this one? Oklahoma is reportedly going to be hosting him on a visit.
Yeah, it sounded like when that one came up, I think there was another one, Westmoreland I think he was from UTSA or UTEP, one of the two. I think UTSA, to be exact. Anyway, we were looking at a few edges, and I mentioned this before. I don't think this has anything to do fully with the R. Mason Thomas decision. I think that Miguel Chavis and Brent Venables are looking at trying to supplement from losing those 3 edges going into graduation, and Ethan Downs and Caden Woolard as well as Trace Ford. You still want to have some veterans, but you also are looking at wanting to play your current players. Now, granted, Jeremiah Alexander and Marvin Jones Jr. are also former 5-stars that you were recruiting back in the day. So going after them totally makes sense because in talent-wise, I think Jeremiah was like a top 10 player in the country on Rivals back when he was a prospect. It's pretty huge for you to be able to go after that. And honestly, it shows better optics too to what Oklahoma's trying to do. I mean, a lot of people have been a little down on the transfer portal acquisitions that Oklahoma's had. And, which I totally understand in a way, while at the same time recognizing that it does feel like Oklahoma has been focusing on getting players that actually don't hinder the development and the play opportunity of the current players. So to me, I'm not losing my mind on who we're bringing in so far. Some people are, but it to me feels like they like their own players. But Jeremiah Alexander is one that you definitely would want to consider heavily, being a former 5-star, and he has the skill set, especially because he's what, 6'1"? He's kind of like an R. Mason Thomas, if you really think about it.
Yeah. Coming out of high school, he was 6'2", 235.
Yeah.
So he's got some linebacker size to him. So I don't know if they're looking at him maybe as coming in as a linebacker or if they're looking at him as an edge. But according to the 247 Sports Composite, was the number one edge coming out of high school in 2022. So you're looking at the number one and the number two edge guys from back in the day. He did have a Clemson offer, so Brent Venables was already in on him before he ended up at Oklahoma. So it's fascinating to see. And then the other one here, Michigan defensive lineman Owen Wafle. This is an intriguing one. Oklahoma is recruiting Luke Wafle out of Hun School. They got Logan Howland out of Hun School up there in New Jersey. Is this an intriguing name for you? Do you think Oklahoma's going to try and do something here with Owen, the defensive lineman out of Michigan?
Oh, absolutely. This is one player that Oklahoma definitely needs to go after, because if you can get one brother, you probably can land the other. As Luke is a prospect for the 26 class, Owen being a 25, so he'd be a young defensive lineman that you would be bringing into your young room, which you could use an additional one, right? Because in the last class, this most recent class, the only one you brought in is Trent Wilson. You got Alexander Shield Knight, who is an edge, but your interior guy is only Trent. And so you could use one more. Bringing in Owen gives you another young dude to go right there next to Trent Wilson that could grow and develop next to, the likes of a Marcus Strong, as well as David Stone and Jaden Jackson. You could use additional bodies there. And I think that getting a guy like Owen would be fantastic. But then again, you also get the opportunity to win Luke Wafle, who is another, I think he's a 4-star prospect in the 26 class. Yeah, you definitely want to try and go after that.
Yeah, I think you can never have enough defensive line depth. And so, yeah, if you can add a guy like Owen who spent a year with Michigan, that's a good place for a defensive lineman. Yeah. And then you can add him to your interior rotation, and then you can potentially bring on Luke. Like you mentioned, Luke is a 4-star prospect out of Hun, the number 28 defensive lineman, number 2 player in New Jersey. So Oklahoma, they're kind of, again, showing us that they're willing to go to all kinds of lengths to add talent to the roster. Now it's just a matter of those pieces coming together and performing and hopefully improving upon Oklahoma's win total in 2025. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, over on YouTube. You can follow me at John9Williams. You can read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. You can also follow the show at Locked On Sooners on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you like to do your social media stuff. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. Catch you then. Boomer.
Sooner.